My name is Matthew Todd, and welcome to Inside the Scale Up. This is the podcast for founders and executives in tech looking to make an impact and learn from their peers within the tech business. We lift the lid on tech businesses, interviewing leaders and following their journey from startup to scale up and beyond, covering everything from developing product market fit, funding and fundraising models to value proposition structure and growth marketing. We learn from their journey so that you can understand how they really work, the failures, the successes, the lessons along the way, so that you can take their learnings and apply them within your own startup or scale up and join the ever-growing list of high-growth UK SaaS businesses. Hi and welcome back to the podcast. Really excited today to be joined by Nick Telson, co-founder of a business called Trumpet. Good afternoon, Nick. Great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the chat.
No, absolutely. I think there's a lot I think our audience can learn about your startup journey, investing journey, as well as from your new current startup. So to kick things off, are you okay just to give a little bit of background about yourself and your experience in your business so far?
Yeah, for sure. So I did languages at university, so nothing to do with business. I went straight from university into a marketing grad scheme at L'Oreal in the UK. And worked there for 4-ish years, worked my way up quite quickly then, became marketing manager of one of their professional brands. And then the next step would have been general manager of a brand. And I sort of saw what my general manager was doing, which was far removed from the fun marketing stuff that I enjoyed so much. And yeah, at that time, myself and my best mate from uni, Andrew, was sort of formulating the plans for what became Design My Night. So we worked for sort of another year in corporate while formulating our plans for Design My Night and launched that. Then left our corporate gigs, went full-time on Design My Night, grew that over 7 years, exited in 2017, had a 2-year earn out there and was fully out of the business December 2019. And sort of since then I've been angel investing. So I angel invest in about 57 startups across the globe. And yeah, then for our sins decided during COVID to go again. So that is our new reincarnation, which is Trumpet, as you mentioned in the intro.
Yeah, no, thank you. Fantastic. I'm looking forward to finding out more about all of those, especially Trumpet. But before we get to that, I guess we've got to cover Design My Night, given the startup success you obviously had there. What was that journey like? And, you know, what gave you the confidence to give that a go and to quit the corporate gig for that startup?
I think it was naivety, to be honest. It was back in 2010, so we didn't really, there wasn't all the content and noise there is today around being a founder and doing startups and stuff. And fundraising was in a very different place then too. So it was, we just had the idea. We left our jobs on really good terms, which I think is important. So, you know, we weren't joining competitors or anything. And we said, look, we're doing our own thing. If it goes wrong, you know, we'd love to come back. We were happy in our jobs. So I think that gave us a bit of a safety net. And yeah, fortunately for us, it kept going. It was a much slower burn than you'll see in like TechCrunch and stuff. We only ever raised half £500,000 from 6 angels. And we did that 2 years into the journey. So we raised 250, followed by another 250 the year after. And that's all we ever raised. And then we took that to a team of over 100 and then exit.
And what was the premise behind Design My Night at that point, and how did it evolve to what we see now? Did it stay pretty fixed, or were there a lot of kind of pivots and changes, adjustments along the way?
Yeah, definitely changed a lot along the way. The first idea before even getting close to launch was more on the deals side, so more of like drinks deals. we were actually in New York when we got the idea, and there was a similar site in New York, and we thought, oh, that'd be good to take to London. Fortunately, a good friend of mine worked at Diageo, and I said the idea to her, and she said, look, if one of your revenue lines is advertising, then no drinks brand will advertise on a deals site, like cheap drinking.
Right.
So that made us rethink everything. And we sort of looked to like compare the market and go compare. Those sites were getting big, the price comparison sites. And we thought, oh, well, maybe we can sort of shift slightly and do a price comparison site for going out. So that's what we launched with, was like London's first price comparison site for going out. Obviously, London's great for that because you've got very expensive places, but then happy hours and cheaper drinks deals. So our users could go on the site and pick location and type of night they wanted, and then budget. So we made up 3 categories, which was essentially like cheap, moderate, and expensive. And that's sort of how we shoehorn the original idea, but into something more palatable. We then evolved that into a booking model. So similar to like Open Table. So you could go on our site and actually book into bars. At that time, we were just doing bars. And we would take a clip of everyone we put into their bars. And then that pivoted into a software company. So we went from media site to software, where we actually built reservation software again at first for bars. And we also built ticketing software so they could sell tickets. And we sort of pivoted the whole business from content purely and advertising revenue to software. Sort of that was the thing that kicked us on and took us to exit.
I see. And what was it that triggered? Obviously, the first kind of pivot of idea, makes a lot of sense based on that feedback. But that switch from ad, based revenue and media to the ticketing side of things, what were some of the factors that influenced that decision?
Well, I think we soon realized that just, like an ad-based model wasn't going to be enough. You've got to be pretty damn big to make an ad model work. And we knew that would take quite a lot of time to get to. And that model was on its way out anyway. The traditional sort of selling banner ads and stuff wasn't really a proposition we actually liked when we were looking where the business was going to go. And also on an acquisition, you're a lot less valuable as a media business than we did become as a SaaS business. So I think from a strategy point of view, we were always looking for, okay, well, we've got this B2C audience. How can we leverage that and what can we do next?
I see.
And it was actually one of our clients, one of our marketing managers of a bar that we worked with, who gave us the idea. She said, have you guys ever looked at sort of ticketing and booking for bars? Like, we use Open Table, but it's for restaurants and it doesn't work. So that gave us the inspiration to actually sit down, speak to lots of customers, and start fleshing out the idea of what would become our booking and ticket software for like the casual hospitality space.
Yeah, I see. So really based on that kind of customer feedback or one of your types of customers, I guess, moving into that space. Obviously, it makes sense, certainly a more scalable model. And how big did that get, both kind of financially, number of users, as well as geographically?
So we scaled across 22 cities in the UK. When we exited, we had around 15,000 SaaS customers for ticketing and booking. And the website, the front end website, had 8 million uniques a month. I think at one point, 1 in 6 Londoners used it every month. So
wow.
We managed to scale all types of the platforms, and the B2C actually then became our flywheel to attract B2B. So our bars and pubs and casual dining restaurants wanted to be on Design My Night as a B2C marketing platform, but you could only be on our site if you used our software.
I
So
see.
the more we could scale the B2C side, the more attractive it came to attract the actual software side of things. And then obviously the more venues we had on the site, the more content we could create, more SEO, more traffic, which then made us more attractive, and they wanted to be on our site. And then that flywheel just kept spinning, basically.
Yeah, I see. That makes a lot of sense. I certainly like that flywheel analogy. It certainly makes sense for that type of marketplace. And when it came to launching into a new city, then how did you approach generating enough of that content to generate the C side of that B2C equation?
Yeah, so we built our own internal sort of CMS, which had automation built into it. So we built our own tool stack on the B2C side of things as well. So we had our own internal editorial team. We had freelancers in the different cities as well, but it was very easy for them to spin up content and spin up sort of lists, top 10 basement bars, top 10 rooftop bars. So it was normally, depending on the size of the city, probably like a 3 to 4 month prep time in the background before there was enough content generated to then put the site live. Obviously, from an SEO point of view, the smaller the city, the less SEO competition there was. So actually, when we launched each city with a lot of content and already designbynight.com behind us, which had good SEO ranking, then it was quite easy for us to go up the listings in these regional cities.
Yeah, I see. I think that's really interesting. So thank you for sharing that. We've had a few people on the podcast before, also, working on marketplaces of different types. And I think that's certainly one of the things that many of those people and companies have struggled with, is that flywheel, getting that initial momentum, going to a good enough degree that you are attracting both of those parties.
Yeah, I see a lot of market as an investor now. I see a lot of marketplace businesses, and I think my advice in the main is you're not going to get everything at once. So if you're, I love sort of SaaS enabled marketplaces. So, if you have SaaS on the B2B side, but you're just finding it difficult to get that breakthrough for whatever reason, well, then spend some time growing the B2C, and then that demand generation will then almost force the B2B side to sort of use the software. And the reverse is, if you're having a lot of success with the B2B SaaS side of things, then focus on that, get a lot of those people on the platform, and then you can use SEO and other tactics to grow the B2C side. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think that's a good way of breaking down where you need to focus. I see a lot of those marketplaces where the B2B side of the sale is very, very easy. They want more customers, they want more efficient systems to manage that, yet it's the customers that they need to do the work on attracting. And many of those people that those products are aimed at are not marketers themselves as well. They don't know how to go about, attracting new customers to their business, which is where those marketplaces can obviously come in and help.
Yeah, I think one important thing when you're doing SaaS-enabled marketplaces is, again, depending on the business, but what you don't want to become is just a lead gen tool. So if they're only using your SaaS because they think they're going to get new customers, that's a very risky sort of line to walk, because you'll get to a stage, and we had this at Design by Night, that even if you're bringing them lots of customers, they want more. They're never happy. And, well, we're paying you for this software. You've got to keep bringing us more customers. Where what we said to our sales team at Design by Night was, they really have to see the value in our booking software to smooth all their operations and the tons of features it had. And then actually us bringing them new customers from Design by Night was just a cherry on the top, and it should only be the cherry on top. And I think when we pivoted that message, our churn came down a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I see. It makes a lot of sense. So there's got to be inherent value in that B2B SaaS platform in its own right. It can't just be a tool that you're trying to leverage in order to get some momentum in a marketplace, because, as you say, churn is likely to suffer.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, interesting. And was it 7 years you said Design by Night that that journey lasted in total?
Yeah, so it's from 2010 to 2017 until the exit, and then we had
Yep.
a 2 year earn out until 2019. So the whole journey was actually 9 years.
Yeah, I see. So the kind of 2 year earn out on top of that 7 year period. And what was that process of selling the business and the earn out like? Obviously, many startup founders, dream of being in that position, but speaking to many founders, there are pros and cons to that. So I'd be interested to hear a little about what you can share about that side of things, and deciding on whether that was the right acquisition as well.
Yeah, for us, exit was always what we wanted to achieve. So Andrew and
Yeah,
myself were very much on the same page. We knew we didn't want to do Design My Night forever. We could have taken it global and scaled it even further. But for us, we thought, okay, we're sort of, that was our first startup as well, don't forget. So we were sort of emotionally drained, and it had really taken its toll on us. We'd grown it quickly in terms of customers and revenue. We were very profitable as well. So we just thought, if we can get a certain value for it, then I think now is the time to bow out and be happy with that. So we were quite strategic with it all. So we actually engaged with a broker. And it was a 7-month process from engaging that broker to getting the deal done. And we had about 3 offers on the table in the end, and negotiated with all those 3. And you're looking at stuff like total value of the deal, earnout, the terms of the earnout, the length of the earnout, because earnouts can be very different as well. And after some back and forward with the acquirer who actually bought us, that they were the right deal for us.
Yeah, and going via that broker route, is that something you'd recommend to other startup founders?
Yeah, I mean, to engage a broker, you obviously have to be, a total broad brushstroke, but you've got to be looking to sell, or think you can sell for at least sort of 20 plus million, because obviously they've got to take their slice of the pie as well. And as I said, it's a long relationship you have with that broker. So it's not a job they just come in and do in a couple of weeks. So there's lots of new sites out there now where you can sort of try and sell your startup for $1 million or under or whatever. So if you're engaging brokers, and we spoke to some huge brokers that actually wouldn't take us on either because we were too small. So they were looking for like 100 million plus deals. So I think you've got to be at the right size to get a good broker on board. Otherwise, it's more just having maybe like an accountant and a lawyer around you to help you get the deal done.
Yeah, I see. And is there anything that in terms of the way you structured the business, the processes, or the people that you felt was a good enabler to make the business saleable and valuable at the right kind of valuation as well?
Yeah, I think that we were growing quickly, so we were easily double-digit growth year on year. We had very low churn. We had very good logos of customers. So there were, if anyone goes to pubs and bars in the UK, we had like Fuller's pubs and Young's pubs and well-known chains like Dirty Martini and Mitchells and Butler. So we had, a lot of the very well-established pub and bar groups using our software, which I think gives you credibility to an acquirer, gives you sort of long-term safe ARR in their eyes. It's a lot more unlikely that a big one is going to churn if they've got you in all of their sites. So I think that gave a lot of credibility to the deal. As I said, we were very profitable. So we were running at like a 48% EBITDA margin. So that was obviously very attractive to our acquirers as well. So, from day one, they bought us, they were buying a profitable business. And it was a profitable business without, it's not like we were spending nothing, So we had a marketing budget. We had a team of over 100. We had a nice office. So, we weren't mega lean to get to profitability. It was actually just, we'd figured out how to scale without needing
Yeah.
to blow a ton of cash. So I think all of those things were very important. We had a team that had been with us for a long time. So a lot of our senior leaders had grown up at the company. So a lot of them were there for like 4 or 5 years with us. So the acquirer knew that the company would be in safe hands as well if they just looked after the team when we'd gone. So I think all of those things combined made us quite an attractive proposition.
Yeah, I see. So it sounds like, you're not one of those, businesses that you might read about on TechCrunch that, in theory, could be profitable if they just turned off these particular strategies and, marketing or advertising approaches or whatever it may be. You genuinely were profitable, scalable, scaling, without, it sounds like, operational dependency on yourself.
Yeah, the tech was scalable. Our sales playbooks were scalable. As I said, we built our own tech stack to produce content very quickly as well. So they could see that they actually just needed to keep adding fuel to the fire to keep growing it at quite a scalable rate. And look, now the market's fallen out, anyway. So these companies that were chasing crazy valuations without profitability or even a route to profitability have sort of got found out recently. So, whether you're taking venture or not, you should look to build a profitable business at scale. That's the dream and that's what it should be.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with that. The startups and scale-ups we work with and advise on as well, we always look for the ones that are genuinely trying to build a very quickly profitable or route to profitable business in its own right that genuinely adds value, not a $1 billion bet, which is, just gambling in the tech space, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And, there has been a lot of, like Canva and Hotjar and Zero, like there are companies out there that shown you that you can scale sensibly but fast and build billion-dollar businesses. But look, another thing I always say to founders is you don't necessarily have to build $1 billion business. So it depends what you want out of your startup. If you want financial freedom or life-changing money for you and your family, well, depending how lavish you want your lifestyle to be, that doesn't need to be $1 billion business. So, if you can grow a 20, 30, 40 million pound dollar business, then that will put you in an extremely strong financial position. So, if you're taking VC money, then yes, they will expect you to go on that route to becoming a unicorn. But, that's definitely not the only route that founders should or need to take.
No, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. And I think you mentioned when taking on VC money, that's almost the expectation from their side in order to generate the level of profits and multipliers they're looking for. And I think for many startup founders, I know of many that are in talks about securing investment, and they, pretty much without exception, love the validation then that can give almost as much, if not more than the resources and scaling and acceleration that the money behind that investment provides as well. And it's certainly something I'd recommend that people, think carefully about, because it's, as you say, there are many ways to building a business that's worth a decent amount of money.
Yeah. And, angel, there's a much bigger angel network now. There's new vehicles in the UK and US where, you can do syndicates and angels can put in smaller checks, and you can do like rolling closing. Like there's loads of different mechanisms now where you can take money smaller in incremental chunks and scale the business, understand the business, figure out your playbooks. And then if you're in a position where you think, okay, this thing can really scale, then, by all means go and take venture. But yeah, that's one thing I always say after I've invested in a company. Once they've got my cash in the bank and I can't take it back, I say, look, what do you as founder or founders actually want from this business? And, let me help you get there. Because if you want to build a 30 million pound business versus a 500 million pound business, that's two very different journeys. So let's, which journey do you want to go down, and let's optimize the business for the outcome that you want. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's so important to be deliberate about that and to make it a conscious decision. So, switching on to Your current startup then, Trumpet, tell us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, so Andrew and I said to ourselves, like, if we're going to go again, we're going to do it for the love of building businesses, and we wanted to. We're ideating all the time, us two, but we were like, if we're going to go again, we want something that's instantly scalable, that's more product-led growth. So, users can just sign up and get going themselves. Definitely not B2C. So we had sort of lots of tick box, and we ideated on loads of different ideas. And then we landed on what is now called Trumpet. And we thought back to our sales team at Design by Night, where we were selling 3 different SaaS products. And just the sales space is an interesting one. It's arguably one of the most important in a business. If you don't sell, you don't make any revenue. But actually one of the most underdeveloped in terms of tech. On the one hand, you've got lots of outreach tools and LinkedIn Navigator and all of those. And at the other, you've got CRMs. But actually, if you think the sales process in between those two things is like PDFs, Google Slides, Canva slides, emails, phone calls, sending videos of use cases and demos and contracts and SLAs. And, it's just back and forward between you and the buyer constantly. And outreach is getting harder and harder to break through the noise. And we just thought, okay, there's got to be a better way of digitizing that whole process. So we sort of took inspiration from Canva and Slack and Notion and built what we call hyper-personalized pods or microsites that actually follow the buyer on their whole journey. So from the salesperson, from cold outreach all the way to onboarding, they use one hyper-personalized pod, as we call it, to get their foot in the door in a charismatic and dynamic way that's not just a PDF. You can then communicate back and forward with your buyer within the pod, like Slack. You can then add pages very quickly to those pods. So if you want to follow up with a testimonial video or use cases, rather than an email with a heavy video or a Dropbox, you just drop it into your pod. And then you get the deal done, basically moving through the sales cycle by adding pages and more content to your pod, and then the contract. And then, a big thing in SaaS, 26% of deals fall through from handover from sales to CS. So we wanted to make that process a lot smoother as well for both sides. So once the salesperson has closed the deal in the same pod, they can hand over the customer to customer success, and they can add onboarding pages with mutual action plans and timelines and training videos. So for the buyer, there's just this one seamless journey of interaction with the company that is selling the product all the way through that whole journey.
I see. Now, it sounds really, really interesting, and definitely another time would love to see that in action myself, as well, as I'm sure that could be pretty useful from what you've described. And I like the fact that you're looking at it from quite a different perspective as well. Too many people looking at that whole space generally a little bit too much, internally, and not thinking about the customer and the buyer journey and putting that first and foremost. But how did you go about validating something like that to see whether that was something that buyers would engage with and deliver better results?
So the actual first idea was going to be called Loop, and it was actually going to be for founders to raise money. So instead of a pitch deck, you would send a personalized pod to an investor, which people are using it for to this day. But we just thought that market is actually quite small if you take yourself out of the bubble of the entrepreneurship world, and compare that with sales, which pretty much every company in the world has sales. So we pivoted before even building to Trumpet and to be focused on salespeople, knowing that the founder use case would be one that people used it for anyway. We then spoke to over 150 salespeople. So through our network, through cold outreach, we said, look, we've got this type form, or we'd love to jump on a call for 15 minutes, whatever's easiest for you. We just had like a one pager of what the idea was at that time, like no product, no designs or anything, and said, look, what do you think? How do you do sales? Is this something you'd be interested in? Collated all of that feedback into a document, positive, negative, and indifferent, and ideas. Lots of people had great ideas as well. The overwhelming sentiment was positive, which is why we thought, okay, let's progress this. And a lot of the ideas that actually came out in that scoping time, we put into our MVP as well. So, that process was like 3 months. So we really, really take our time when we ideate, not just to get excited and jump straight into it and come up with a name and start working on the branding. We sort of do everything we can to dissuade ourselves that it's a good idea. And if we can get through that process unscathed, then you're like, okay, there is something here, from an unbiased opinion. Let's progress it.
Yeah, it sounds like a very thorough and scientific approach to that validation. I think a lot of founders might be scared to do in case it proves that initial idea and enthusiasm wrong.
Exactly. And, I see that on investment decks with competitor slides. It's like they've sort of scratched at the surface because they're too afraid to actually deep dive into competitors and see if people are already doing it. And I think that's just one of the biggest, if you're going to be a founder and go on this journey, it's hard enough as it is, without having a duff idea. So I think you've just got to do everything possible at the start to just check that no one's doing exactly what you're doing. If they are, that you can have clear USPs or different verticals, or a better route to market than they do. Make sure all of your ducks are in a row before you then make that huge decision of starting a company.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long was it then between that initial 3-month period of validation to having something you could actually start testing, with salespeople?
So we sort of ignored the whole lean startup vibe. And Andrew and I fortunately had the finances to build, we worked with an agency to build a brand and the product. And that took actually like 7 to 8 months. So we collated all this feedback, which was almost like our early testing. We then built out this product, and people that are using it now, it's just coming out of beta actually. They're like, this is a Series A level product. This is not an MVP, and that's sort of what we wanted to come out of the gates with. It took a long time to build the product, to get it looking, feeling amazing. We really wanted it to work super quickly and seamlessly and enjoyably for the salespeople and customer success people that used it. We then launched a website with a wait list. We got around 2,500 people on that wait list, and then nurtured all of those leads, and then opened up the beta sort of middle of this year. Have slowly been letting people on the product since, and learning, watching, asking for feedback, shipping new iterations of the product, and just doing that sort of feedback loop that you should do with any early stage product. So like 4 or 5 months in, we closed a round in June, and we have about 1,000 users actually on the platform at the moment.
Okay. No, pretty impressive numbers, and pretty impressive to be able to launch something so polished. But I think there can be a bit too much emphasis or misunderstanding, perhaps, of launching lean and the minimal viable. People tend to focus on the M and forget about the V piece, right? It's got to be viable as well, which means it's got to do a good job of solving the core problem that your audience has.
Yeah, and I think, I'm all in favor of like shipping quickly and getting it out there and learning. But I also think there's a bit of pressure on us because it's our second go. People that I do a lot on LinkedIn. So sort of my network on LinkedIn, I think would have had quite high expectations of the next product. So it's just not really in Andrew and I's nature to put anything that for us to, as you say, isn't viable. And look, even launching such a polished first iteration of a product, we've shipped over 65 features in the last few months, and our public roadmap has over 200 feature requests. So, it's not like we've launched this all singing, all dancing, don't need to iterate it on anymore. But our sort of V1, we wanted much higher standards than, what may be people's idea of a lean startup V1 is.
Yeah. And obviously you mentioned, you kind of moved away from just that kind of pitch deck scenario to sales, as I say, every company has sales and needs sales. How do you then narrow the focus to a particular type of company, industry, sector? How do you make that niche smaller so that you don't have too much to build and you actually have a degree of focus to start with at launch time?
Yeah, that was super important for us. So, the scope of Trumpet is vast. It's actually about not getting carried away at the start. And as you say, like really determining who our high ICP is. And we actually had like high, medium and low. And we actually broke up our wait list into high, medium and low ICPs as well. So we had a very good idea of sort of, for us, it was, B2B SaaS companies that were selling SaaS, ideally post pre-seed, so probably seed plus. We originally thought maybe up to sort of series B or C, but in a really nice way, we've already had a lot of enterprise interest. So we're sort of selling to enterprise probably 6 months before we thought we might be. Because if anything, they've got huge sales teams, but haven't actually got great technology in there to power their sales teams. Whereas maybe startups are a lot more, looking for great tech, and they've already set up loads of different systems and stuff. So we've sort of expanded it a bit more and done some top-down sales to enterprise while still trying to get the PLG bottom-up going to the smaller, the startups. And then we've also just let users, because of the PLG nature of it, figure it out without us. So, we've got, for example, we don't advertise this anywhere on our site. We've got real estate companies using it to show off amazing homes and holiday villas. We've got quite a few recruitment companies using it to do sort of personalised recruitment outreach. We have people using it for internal comms in their businesses, because it's a lot more of an engaging way than just sort of an email and an intranet. So I think that's the exciting thing for us is, as we get bigger, we will obviously build out lots of different use cases, but our core messaging as a marketing engine is still very much sales and customer success in B2B SaaS companies. And just let people on who aren't in that bracket, but are just finding great ways to use Trumpet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And looking at the website as well, it's clear that you're very good at creating content for your target audience. That is clear from the way it's laid out and the content that's on there. But something that struck me as well was the term you use, pods, to describe those microsites. I'm a firm strong believer in a differentiated positioning, but also using language in order to do that and distinguish yourself from competitors as well. So I'd love to kind of know how deliberate some of those language choices are and what went behind that as well.
Yes, it's a very good point. We were very deliberate with that. I think to all the points you mentioned, the term microsite in my mind, has a bit of an old school marketing feel, when brands used to launch sort of mini microsites within their bigger brands. We sure did that at L'Oreal. We did that with L'Oreal with new launches, for example, back, ages ago, where you launched sort of a new brand on a microsite. We also wanted to do the classic, come up with some language that is, unique to us, but that also we can see salespeople would adopt as their own language. So we wanted a word that we could envisage a sales director saying to their team, like, how many pods have you sent out? Have you sent out a trumpet? Have you sent them a trumpet pod, etc., rather than have you sent them a microsite? So we, very deliberate on that. Risk with the word pod, obviously, is people think podcasts when you hear pod nowadays. So that's something, we have to overcome. As you'll see on the website, we're actually relaunching the website soon, but, we do reference microsites. So we don't just leave the pod there by itself for people to figure out what that is. And then, we're already seeing that now when people are giving us feedback or asking help for it, they're using the term pod, not microsite, which is great. So from a marketing point of view, we need to get the word pod out there, but with some grounding in what a pod actually is. And, it takes time. Now you say, Slack me, don't message me. Exactly. So we were very deliberate on trying to come up with our own language throughout the whole product, in fact.
Yeah, no, I think that's super interesting. And I like the way, as you describe, you introduce and want to promote that term, which is uniquely yours, but you're also doing in a way that bridges where their thinking and knowledge is at the moment to it by linking it to microsites as you introduce the concept, which is, I think is a very smart approach. And, the word pod it's a very shareable short word and term that you can see those teams and people using. Yeah.
And a pod, people still, before podcasts, a pod was still, like a group, a container, a space. You used to go in offices, you had your pods where you could go and work. So, the term made sense for what the actual product was. It wasn't totally random. So, when you then see what Trumpet is, you're like, oh, okay, I get that. I'm creating a pod. So that makes total sense. So as I said, it's just up to us now from a marketing point of view to get across what that pod is before people are actually in the product and seeing it for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's where the successful products that we see, really shine, is then it's not just a marketing exercise in order to capture some interest, right? It's something that runs through the entire customer experience as well and reinforces that.
Yeah, and it's that point of differentiation. And look, the grand vision, if you can own that word in the sales space, then that's obviously extremely attractive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, then as soon as you're onboarding customers there, they can't compare you to anybody else directly because of that thinking then that's kind of been ingrained within the way that they work with the platform and system. Anything else by definition will be, disruptive to that current experience.
Exactly that.
Yeah. So speaking of vision and having that first successful startup exit, then what is the vision for Trumpet?
So it's a big vision. Like for us, there's no reason why it can't be as big as sort of Slack and Notion and Figma. It touches sales, it touches marketing, it touches customer success, it touches account management. The only team we necessarily don't touch is tech. So we've got a big land and expand strategy within the companies that we're working with. We've already got customers around the world because it's as long as they speak English at the moment, then they can just sign up and get going themselves. So that's the beauty of a well executed PLG model. For us, we're really, really excited. Our beta users are already seeing results, and they're messaging us excitedly on their outreach and the deals they've closed with the pods, and feedback from their own buyers saying how much they were wowed by it and loved it. We've got a huge vision on where the product needs to go and where it can go. But we're very excited about what the prospects can bring for Trumpet.
Yeah, no, fantastic. It sounds very exciting, and I can certainly see the potential. And in terms of, just before we do wrap up, because I want to be respectful of your time as well, in terms of helping you get to that vision, are you looking to entirely self-fund, looking at taking on investment? What does that path look like, do you think, to getting there?
So we did. So Andrew and I self-funded it to start with. We then actually did do, contrary to everything I said earlier in this episode, we did do a VC round, and I think that's something I talk about is there's no right or wrong way. For us, as I said, it's PLG. It's instantly scalable. It's instantly global, which was very different to Design by Night. So you can still raise VC money with profitability in mind, which is very much something we're doing. We're still running it in a lean way, but with a longer runway. So we raised 1.6 from a couple of VCs and funds in June. And we're the irony of venture is then everyone's all over you and wants you to raise again straight away. But it seems like they don't learn. But we've said, look, we're head down at the moment. We know what we need to do. We've got enough money to execute strong MRR growth and happy customers. So for the foreseeable now, at least, we're head down and looking to grow the business.
Cool. Fantastic. No, I wish you the best of luck with that journey. No doubt it will be very successful. And we'll make sure we do put links in the notes for this episode as well. So any founders wanting to check that out for their own sales and their own sales teams as well can obviously take a look and read a little bit more. Thank you for taking the time today. And before we do head off, is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with? I think there's a lot they can take away from this, but anything you'd like to add to what we've already said?
I think I always say to founders, just be aware of how hard it is. I'm a huge advocate for the startup world and I mentor a lot of founders. So, I want as many people starting companies as possible. But, whatever you now see on social media, it's still the hardest thing you'll ever do. So I think if you're going to go on that journey, make sure you are ready to work incredibly hard, whether you like it or not. Be obsessed with what you're doing, not being able to switch off, at least in the early years. And your loved ones around you, make sure they're fully aware of the journey you're about to go on. If you think you're physically, emotionally and mentally ready to start that journey, then of course go on it. And can be a thrilling ride, but just be aware of how tough it is. Fantastic. I think that's very good advice. I'd encourage anyone to listen to, no matter where you are on that journey. And a great place to leave it. So Nick, thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inside the Scale Up. Remember, for the show notes and in-depth resources from today's guest, you can find these on the website insidethescaleup.com. You can also leave feedback on today's episode, as well as suggest guests and companies you'd like to hear from. Thank you for listening.